Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today for a foundation wear test. I haven't done one of these in a very long time because I've been trying to use up the foundations I have, but earlier this year I bought a few foundations. And the one that was probably the most recent release that I thought might be interesting to test out is by Becca. So this is the Ultimate Coverage 24-Hour Foundation. I picked the shade Vanilla. I did buy this online, so it probably is a little bit too light for me right now. It's more of my winter shade, but I have bronzed it up to sort of make it work. But I just thought, I'll do a wear test, let you know what I think about it. It's not a first impressions. I have used this a couple of times already, and so I've already got an idea of what I think about it. I know that a lot of people love this foundation, and I think the coverage is really good. It sort of boasts a sort of ultimate coverage. It's supposed to be like a full coverage foundation, and it's supposed to wear 24 hours. I'm not going to wear it 24 hours, but I'm going to give it a good shot. For background reference, I have oily combination skin, so in my T-zone I get quite oily. The rest of my face is quite normal, so I don't usually have dry patches. I don't usually deal with dryness. It's more normal and then oily, but not like extremely oily, just sort of it's oily. And today it's about 22 degrees Celsius, so it's not particularly hot, it's not particularly cold, so it's pretty normal circumstances to test this foundation out. So let's get on to the application and I'll check back in throughout the day to let you know how it's wearing. So it is currently 8:45 a.m. and I'm just about to put this on. I'm not applying a primer simply for two reasons. One, I have used this foundation a couple of times, just yesterday and the day before, and I used a primer both times. So I sort of want to see how it applies and wears without a primer. The second reason I don't want to use a primer is I do know that different primers affect, the wear time, the finish, etc., etc. So I sort of just want to use this on its own. My shade is actually surprisingly a little bit light for me from, using it the last couple of days. The shade that I got is in Vanilla. So the claims on the box are that it's got intense pigment that ensures uneven texture, redness, hyperpigmentation, and other imperfections are concealed. It's got 22% water that adds hydration, and an elastic finish to prevent pigments from settling into lines, dryness, or pores. So we'll see that. And I didn't even know this claim before sitting here and reading this. It says it's one pump to perfection. So you're supposed to use one pump of foundation and use your one perfecting brush or your preferred foundation brush to sweep foundation horizontally across the forehead and then move to the cheeks and the chin. Finish by sweeping vertically down the nose. Now, that's not how I was applying this at all. I've applied it with a brush and I've also applied it with a sort of sponge type thing. Like I've just hydrated this. I thought I was going to do half face using sponge, half face using a brush. This is Ella Cosmetics. It's very hydrated, very soft. It's the new sort of turquoise one. But I think because I haven't been doing that, and one of my criticisms with this was I found that it takes a lot to apply. So I'd apply it to my sponge, for example, like 1 to 2 pumps, and then that would only do like this area. It wouldn't, I think it gets absorbed into the sponge or it just doesn't move. It's quite a thick foundation. So I might actually do what they say and use one pump and use my desired brush and see how it goes, because spoiler alert, I didn't love this foundation over the last couple of days, so hopefully this new technique changes my mind. So, does have a pump applicator. I'm going to pump one onto the brush, just one, and I'm just going to, the reason I'm putting it onto the brush is because I know that this doesn't spread super well. So I'm going to do what they say, but I'm going to just get some on my face first. You can see that it is really quite decent coverage. The light's coming through, damn it. Okay, I've just had to close the blind. I feel like I'm going to get the curse of either it being too dark or too light right now. Filming in the morning, I get like the sunlight in, so it can really mess up how it looks. All right, I am going to say, I think I like this one pump business and just spreading it all over your face. You don't get full coverage. You can see some redness popping through there, so you might want to like stipple that on so it's laid a little bit more. So hopefully you can see that there is still a lot of coverage going on. So my redness and stuff has sort of been covered mostly. Some of my skin, my scarring on my chin hasn't completely, but I think once again, you can either go in with concealer or just sort of stipple that on so it's a little bit more coverage. I actually don't mind how it looks now. I think it's a nice amount of coverage. I think it's a little bit patchy on my nose. It just doesn't go as seamless as I would like. It looks a little bit like it's separating already and it's just been applied. I did find over the last couple of days of applying this, I did apply too much. I probably used like 2 pumps on the sponge. It just doesn't spread as easily as I did just then with like a brush. So I applied too much and it was too heavy. But I did find also that it applies a little bit patchy. So I'm going to watch that throughout the day because I have had an issue with it sort of wearing off quite patchy. But right now it looks quite good. I like this amount of coverage. This is probably not, everyday sort of coverage. It's probably a little bit more than that. But it's great filming coverage. And if you're going out, it looks really nice. So I'm going to do the rest of my makeup. You can see that it's a little bit like little imperfections are still coming through, so it's not full coverage, but it's a very high coverage. And I can attest to if you apply a little bit more, you will get it even fuller coverage. Because like yesterday, I think I applied it a little bit too heavy and it was a lot of coverage. But this is a nice amount. It doesn't feel too heavy on the skin. It is still a little bit tacky on the skin. So this doesn't actually boast a matte finish. So the dewy sort of finish makes sense. All it says is that it's ultimate coverage in a surprisingly weightless and breathable cream. So it's lightweight, it's oil-free, creates a second skin effect of undetectable, flexible coverage with a natural, long-wearing finish. So the finish is natural. I have to say that it's not undetectable. It looks like I'm wearing a lot of foundation right now. There's no ifs or buts about it. It might feel quite thin because I've put a really buffed in a thin layer, but it does look like I'm wearing a full face of foundation. So undetectable, questionable, but I'll do the rest of my makeup and I'll come back and then I'll check in throughout the day. All right, foundation check-in time. Now I have done my makeup. I did film another video while doing it, so it took an unusually long amount of time. It is currently 10:30, and I do want to say that even though I think when I first applied this foundation, I was like, oh, it looks quite nice, it is starting to get oily very quickly. I didn't put any highlighter on so we can see how it sort of wears. I didn't want the highlighter to sort of mask some of the oils coming through, so I opted for no highlighter today. Another thing I wanted to mention is that it's starting to, there are areas that look quite dry and it's clinging to dry patches. Now, the whole elastic finish where it shouldn't do that, I'm a bit confused. I don't even have dry skin, I have oily skin. So the fact that it looks like it's clinging to dry patches, I don't really understand, but I can already see some oil breaking through around here. So it's getting a bit shiny. So that's what it's at like what, an hour and 45 minutes? Probably not the best, but I thought I'd zoom in and show you. I don't know if you can see the sort of patchiness where it sort of is clinging to some areas. And then if we go around here, you can see that it's already getting quite oily and not really holding up as well as I would like. That is not a good sign whatsoever. And this is sort of what I experienced the last couple of days when I wore this. It looks really nice when you first apply it. There might be areas that cling to certain dry patches or imperfections, but I did find that it sort of breaks down pretty quickly. And this is not a hot day. It's about 22 degrees Celsius today. I've just been at home. I will go out and run some errands and do a few things today. So, I will put it through its paces. But at the hour and 45 minute mark, this is not what I want from a long wear foundation. And I just find that even though I did set it, it feels like it transfers a little bit. So that's also what I experienced over the last couple days. I just found that I would touch my face and you could almost see like finger imprints where it's moved the foundation. So yeah. All right, foundation check-in time. It is 2 o'clock, so it has been a good 5 hours and 15 minutes. And I do want to say, look, I am getting oily. I'm not sure if you can see, if I turn down the brightness a bit more, you should be able to see that I'm getting quite oily. So even though I did, look at that, even though I did powder quite a bit, this is not at all oil controlling, which it doesn't claim to be. It's supposed to be oil free and long wearing, but it's not really claiming to be oil controlling. Okay, so we'll just zoom in a bit. You can see the skin. It doesn't look fantastic. I haven't touched up at all. You can see that it's starting to break down a lot around my nose, and a lot on my chin. One thing I've also noticed in previous days is if you sort of touch your skin for whatever reason, it leaves like, it disrupts the makeup. So you can see like as soon as you sort of touch your makeup for whatever reason, it leaves fingerprints and it transfers. So it's not a great foundation. It's one that I wore the other day. I saw family members, and when you're giving people hugs, you leave little like foundation marks on their shoulders. So it's a very transfery foundation, which I don't like. Look at my fingerprints in there. It's just, yeah, it's not good. I just found myself constantly having to like do this just to sort of, any movements or any sunglasses marks, you really have to correct because it just moves around. So even though it does look okay from a distance, at this point in time, I would really like to touch this up. I wanted to touch up my chin about 4 hours ago. The oils just break through pretty fast and it doesn't really stop. So this is not my favorite foundation at all. I do have to say that at this point, I have noticed that using the method that it's so that they say on the packaging, so using one pump and buffing it in with a brush is a lot better than building it up, because yesterday and the day before, I just used it how I normally use foundation. I did one pump on a sponge, and then because it didn't spread across the whole face, I did another pump and it looked really, really cakey. And so when it did start breaking down like it's doing now, it was a lot more noticeable. So I think this foundation is looking better today because I used a thinner coverage. So I highly recommend following the instructions, use one pump and buff it in. If you use much more, it starts to look very cakey on the skin. I found that it started to settle into dry patches a lot worse than it is today. So I think that is a good tip, and definitely follow those instructions. All right, so it is, what's the time? 6:45, so it's been 10 hours of wear with no touch-ups. Admittedly, you know, I did a few things today, but nothing super strenuous. But I thought I'd check in now before the natural light goes, because I'm still in natural light. I'm right near the window in my study. And the next time I check in will have to be with lights, and it's going to look a lot shitter just because of the lighting. It is quite dewy or oily. I don't think I've had much foundation on my chin for like 8 hours. But the rest of it has held up all right. You know, it's still got the breakdown issue here. It's still got the issue where if you touch it, it smears and smudges. So you have to be really careful not to touch your face at all. Like if you rub up against something, if you touch something, it just sort of smears off. And I think that's my biggest issue with this foundation. All right, guys, it is, what's the time? 9:22. So I've had this on for a good, what is that, 12.5 hours. And look, I'm gonna say from a distance, I still think this foundation looks okay. It doesn't look like it's completely broken down. It is getting very, very oily and dewy, but it doesn't feel oily. It almost feels silicone dry, like that sort of, I don't know, that silicone slip feel that you get with like a silicone primer. You put it on, it sort of then feels a little bit dry. It gives it like oily dry. Does that make sense? It sort of feels like that, which is really interesting. It feels a little bit powdery still. It's clung to dry patches on my forehead. I didn't even know I had dry skin on my forehead. I tried to take some footage in different lighting so you can see. So hopefully that'll be on the screen now where you kind of can see it just on my forehead. It just looks really patchy and it looks like it's like clinging to dry skin, which it claims that it doesn't do. I disagree. So I think that even though from a distance this looks all right, I think for something that's supposed to be a high coverage, long wear foundation, for me this doesn't cut it. I do want to say, however, that this has worn the best today compared to other days when I did wear this fuller coverage, so with like 2 to 2.5 pumps on a sponge, and it sort of has built up the coverage. As it starts to wear away and sort of smear, and as you sort of have touched your face and it wears away really, because it transfers really easily. It looks a lot worse when you build up the coverage. So this is a foundation that really benefits from it being applied really like sheerly, because it just doesn't look as mask-like, and as the oils start coming through and it starts breaking down, it looks like a really heavy full face of makeup, which I just didn't like. So I feel like this is worn a bit better today. It looks a little bit more natural, a little bit more put together. So I do recommend applying it that way. But I just think for a foundation that boasts 24-hour wear, this does not cut it. And even beyond the oil control issues, this doesn't claim to be an oil control foundation, so I can look past that. But my biggest issue with it is that it just smears and transfers. Like I said before, I was at a funeral the other day and I went to hug someone and I got like my foundation on their shoulder, which is really embarrassing. And I feel like with long wear foundations, that shouldn't happen. So, you know, I could deal with the oiliness, I could deal with the oils breaking through and it looking quite dewy, but the breakdown and the transfer makes this sort of like, it kills the experience for me, and it makes this foundation definitely just a foundation that I would wear if I'm filming for a couple of hours, and then I can like remove my makeup, because long wear, it doesn't cut it for me, and I feel like that's its main sort of claim. Also because it does wear away really quickly and quite easily, and I started seeing it wear away on my chin within like an hour and a half of having it on. The full coverage or the ultimate coverage claim, in my opinion, doesn't last either. It's just, I don't understand. I don't get it. In saying that though, I have heard a lot of people say that they really like this, so I think it definitely works on some people. It just for some reason doesn't wear well on me, or I have like higher expectations. I do have some really nice foundations, like I just think of like the Lancome Tint Idol foundation, which I really like. It's not as high coverage as this, but it goes on beautifully and it wears really well. You don't have to worry about touch-ups. Whereas with this, I feel like I need to babysit my makeup a lot, which is really weird. So I feel like maybe for slightly drier skin people, this would be better, but even then it clings to dry patches. So maybe if you're like smack bang, you're really hydrated and you've got normal skin, you don't have oil breaking through, this might be good for you. But for me, it's not one I would repurchase. It's not one that I would actively return. I think I could make this work, but I feel like I'd have to mix it with something that does set a bit better for me to want to wear it on a daily basis. Because for me, like I said, this is probably just a filming foundation because it looks quite like flawless and full coverage when you first put it on, but that degrades very quickly, which is not good for a 24-hour foundation. Anyway, that's my experience with it. I'd love to know what you think of it, and if you really like it, what your skin type is, because yeah, I have heard people say great things about this, and I do understand that if it works for you, it could be a really good foundation, but I would recommend to people get a sample before they decide to buy it, because it is a bit finicky. It's a bit of a funny one. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.